If you find the best teachers out there, they will save you time, they will save you money. And if you're looking for somebody to guarantee your success, you've got to look in the mirror.
That's super cool. Christian, I'd love for you to do the introduction for today's episode.
Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Today is episode 57. It's the 24th of October. It's on a Sunday. And we're joined today by Howard. Thank you, Howard, for joining us. We really appreciate it. Howard, judging from your very, very lovely, sophisticated accent, are you dialing in at an earlier time in the UK, or are you based in Australia?
Well, I come from the UK, but I live in Sydney. So I've escaped the cold and the wet and the miserable weather, and living in sunny Sydney. So yes,
Sydney.
I'm in the same place that.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, go. I was just going to say, I appreciate you joining if it was really early in the morning, but you've decided to swap one end of the weather extreme for another end of the weather extreme. I'm sure it was a drastic change, but yeah, talk to us about everything about yourself, what you do, if you studied, etc., and why the switch? What made you change from the cold, damp wetness to the beautiful Sydney?
Sure. No worries. So I went to university in the UK, studied maths because I was good at maths at school. Didn't know what I wanted to do at the end of doing my degree, and then decided that I didn't want to be an accountant because that's what everybody around me was doing, and naively went along to a job interview that was for a trainee finance manager. And me being very naive at that point, didn't realise that had anything to do with accountancy. Got through the interview. They said, "Oh, well done. You've got the job. Which accountancy qualification do you want to do?" And I thought, what do I do? What do I say here? And I said, which ones do you support? And they went, 70% of the people do this one, and 10% of the people do this one, and 20% of the people did the other one. So I said, I'll do the one that the 70%, assuming that that was the right one. So that's how I got into accountancy. Absolute fluke and a mistake. And it wasn't what I wanted to do. But having thought about it, I didn't do very well at my maths degree. So I barely scraped through. And I thought, well, an accountancy qualification will probably be quite good. So after I resigned myself to doing it, then I thought, that's probably quite a good thing to do. So that's how my career in accountancy started. And it was not something that I deliberately set out to achieve. But I did find out that accountancy is quite structured, and from having a mathematical background and being quite logical, I found that was quite a good fit. But as to how I came to Australia, for anyone that's lived in the UK through a UK wintertime when it's been wet and miserable, I always thought that it would be nice to live somewhere warm. I did have the opportunity to work in Spain for a few months when I was at uni, and I thought, really could see myself living in a warmer climate. But the opportunity never arose until I actually got a spam email, or at least an email from a recruitment agency.
How long were you in UK before you got that email?
So I've only been in Australia since 2008. So I was, I think, 41, 42 before I came over here. So I spent the majority of my working life in the UK. So I'm 55 now. And so I decided to come across. Previously, I'd looked at both Australia or New Zealand. and I'd applied they have a point system on both, and I was just short on the points. I'd never had quite enough points to get in, and I thought, oh well, I don't qualify, so I'll not worry about it. But I then got a spam email to say, oh, Australia and New Zealand are looking for accountants. Come along to this open evening. And so I went along to an open evening. I was feeling very ill, so I sat at the back of the room, coughing and sweating. And they said, oh, at the end of the meeting, they said, oh, we do a free assessment to see, whether you qualify. And I thought, well, I don't qualify. I know I don't qualify. I've done the online tests, went along, filled out my forms, sent them in. And then I think about 3 weeks later, I got a message back, oh, you qualify for X, Y, and Z visas. Which one do you want? So that was how the role kicked, I kicked off the process to come over here. So I've been over here since 2008, been here ever since.
Interesting. To give more context for Christian, could you share how you went from just working and doing accounting to now structuring like 7-8 figure deals and packages? How was that journey like?
Yeah, so I did, having said that I'm a logical person and an accountant and a mathematician, I did get the numbers wrong. Some of them go up to 9 figures.
Wow.
So 3 times in my life I've had something that's in the billions.
My goodness.
So, but these are deals or parts of the business that I'm on. So, I was an accountant and had very good Excel skills, as most accountants do. But I found that I really liked the discipline of building financial models. So I went away on a specific financial modeling training. I made sure I put myself on one of those courses. And then I was looking to capitalize on purely financial modeling rather than accounting. Now, the skills overlap. You do one with the other. But there are some type of to specialize in financial modeling. And I was working in a telecoms company in the UK, and they were just deregulating terrestrial television. So because of the deregulation, they had to figure out how to bid for the licenses that then came up to market. So I then had to work with a number of engineers to put together the financial model that could cope with all of the potential scenarios about the what ifs between what if we go for this license or that license, or we had these components or those components, and so that was my cutting my teeth on the financial modeling as a pure financial modeling job, but that was in a company that knew me. So I was a very good management accountant that had a specialism in financial modeling. So I applied for that job when it came up. And that's how I got into it. And once I found out that actually pays quite well, I then asked for a pay rise and they said no. So I said, okay, don't worry about it. And I found another job that paid more than the pay rise I was asking for, and very quickly found out that even after that, there was another pay jump where, so within a very short period of time, I was able to double my salary within a space of about 2 years. And one of the things that I've learned over my career is that you can never ask the same people that know you that if you're worth X amount, if you ask for, 1.5x or 1.3x or 2x, they're never going to pay you that because they know you as X. They might give you 1.05 or 1 point, they'll give you a 2% or a 5%. They're never going to give you the 30% pay rise. They're never going to give you a 50% pay rise. You go to somebody new and they'll go, the job that we're asking somebody to do is worth 50% more than what you're paying, than what you're earning now. They don't know what you're earning now. To them, you're a completely fresh entity. And therefore, if I can give anybody any advice, if you want a big pay rise, you've got to change company. You've got to go to a new environment where people don't see you as what you were, because what they see you as is the worth or the money that you were being paid before you had your pay rise, not after you had your pay rise.
Yeah, definitely. It's interesting you mentioned that because it's so easy, I guess, when you're working to, develop a sense of loyalty, I guess, to, the company that you're with in terms of, start working with a place from the ground up and then, try and build something. But at the end of the day, you're right. You're just viewed as a number.
Loyalty cuts two ways. In a small company that is growing, there's a lot of opportunity to grow with a company. Yeah. If you're in a big company that is growing organically, then they will tend to hire in above you rather than promote you with. Now, that's not 100% true, because obviously they'll promote within as well. But bigger companies, they tend to find out, and I've worked in small companies and big companies, and my preference is always bigger companies, simply because individuals, don't have quite as much control over your world, and therefore, and it's also when you get to a certain size, they're much more professional, because if they're not professional, they don't survive. So having worked in some smaller companies, found out that sometimes personality gets in the way of competence, and that's never a good thing.
I want to ask, that's an amazing insight. That's a really good golden nugget. I never thought of that. I never seen it that way, where you should be jumping, or you should be trying to look for a new company to get that raise, and that's the most efficient way. And it makes sense, because if you stay in one company, you've always been seen at X amount, and they're only going to give you small increments. Asking for a 30% raise would be just outrageous, because now you're 30% above everyone and all your peers. But when you come in as a new person, it's much easier for them to set you what you want.
You don't take that baggage. Now, I have to always be careful to generalize, because that's never true everywhere. And you can make a statement. You can make any statement, and that statement is never true anywhere, unless it's a physical law of nature, like gravity or something. So you've always got to be careful about generalizing, which is in itself a generalization. No, if you want to get a big pay rise, it's very difficult for your boss, for example, to justify a big pay rise for you to do the same job that you're doing today. So even if the value that you're bringing to the company is greater over time, they're already getting that value today with what they're paying you. So for you to say, I deserve a 20% pay rise, they've already got you at 100%. So for them to pay you that extra 20, you've got to do something extra for that. And sometimes that extra is not leaving. Sometimes, getting an offer from another company would be a way to engineer that. But even then, if you've got an opportunity to go to another company for more money, then you're going to get more experience out of doing that anyway. So very often it helps your career to move companies. But you're never going to win an argument, or very rarely, getting a big pay rise for doing the same job. From a business point of view, it's totally irrational as well.
Yeah, definitely. So coming straight out of uni, you said that I'm in a similar position in terms of, finishing straight out of uni. I've graduated with a Bachelor of Commerce, majoring in accounting, like yourself, in terms of, leaving. Yeah, thank you. But in terms of similar to yourself, in terms of, you left university and you thought just go into accounting, or go into uni and just do accounting because that's what you like. You like maths, you do accounting. It just goes hand in hand. Like you said, Dad's an accountant. It's all the same. It works everywhere. But I guess
save yourself. Do something interesting.
I have saved myself. I'm not going to go down that that accounting route, although it is part of my degree. It will always be there. I can hopefully utilize it. But I guess, what was the point when you mentioned that you really liked Excel and that you went and did the financial modeling course? Was it that you were doing this accounting work? Was it just repetitive for you? Was it just like not exactly what you wanted to do, and you just because essentially it's a big leap to be able to do a new course, especially fresh out of uni, etc., and you have a job. And a lot of people, especially if you're doing that tertiary accounting qualification, was it a chartered accountancy qualification?
So I'm a CIMA accountant, so Chartered Institute of Management Accounting. So in the UK, there are several accounting bodies, but the big one is Chartered. So a chartered an accountant, that to me is a proper accountant. I'm a management accountant, and therefore the training that we get is very heavily towards analysis and management accounting within a business. So instead of being able to do the chart of accounts for any company, and a chartered accountant will be, when you go at the end of the year to get your accounts done, you will go to a chartered accountant. I'm not that accountant. I'm not that type of accountant, and I could not do that job. I have an appreciation for what they do, but I'm incapable of doing that sort of thing myself. But on the flip side, I can analyse till the cows come home in depth as to where the money is being made, where it's been lost, costs. So analysing your P&L, profit and loss account, understanding your balance sheet, and actually helping the business generate revenue and generate profits in the first place. So I help within a company, I help them generate profits.
Yeah, amazing. Because, coming out of uni in Australia, I think a lot of the fresh graduates, they just tend to jump straight into the chartered accountancy program, CA, A, and Z. So that's, I think, quite big over here. But they jump into that. But yeah, for me, it's not exactly the route that I'm going to be going down. Although, it is something that I think would be definitely useful. But yeah, probably not. But in terms of challenges, because you took that financial modeling course, what were some of the challenges that you'd say were the biggest challenges for you doing that, in terms of coming back after finishing the course? And then did you try and find another role, or did you pivot yourself within the company with the course that you did in terms of new experience?
Yeah, so I you've kind of got to be the master of your own career, because most of the time, unless you have a mentor, people will be quite happy for you to sit in the job that you're doing. If you want to change that job, or you want to better your circumstances, you have to put yourself in the position to take advantage of opportunities down the line. So I saw that I was really interested in doing the financial modeling work. I found it much more rewarding than trying to balance a balance sheet at the end of each month and do the journals to make sure that everything was reconciled and balanced. And so I found myself naturally wanting to not do the process of accounting, but to understand the value that accounting could bring to the business. So one of them is a discipline that has to be done, that allows a business to record keep. And so bookkeeping is it's a very, very valuable process to go through, but it is routine. The value, I was looking for where the value is, and the value of a management accountant meant that I could help articulate the company as to where it was making profits or losses, or where it was overspending or underspending, or why things were different from what the forecast was. I therefore really understood where the forecasting came in and the value of the forecasting, and also the problems of making a forecast incorrectly. And so predicting the future became, okay, I really want to be able to do that accurately. So forecasting accurately means that you need to be able to build the models that can do that, and to cope with perhaps unintended consequences that are not always foreseeable. So most people can figure out 2 moves of a Rubik's Cube, what that might look like. 15 moves might be a little bit different to what you might think it looked like. So having some process where you can accurately forecast many, many multiple things happening at the same time and understanding the impact of all of those, that's financial modeling. And so I was interested in it. I saw an opportunity coming up that we were going to have to bid for these licenses. I put myself on a forecast training, financial modeling training before it came up, so that I already had the skills necessary to tackle that project when it did come up. I then put myself forward for the job. So there was a few pieces trying to get ready for it, and then putting myself forward for it. And there was also a little bit of arrogance as well, because I saw my colleagues around me, and I thought, I can do that job better than what they can, and I would trust myself to do that more than I would trust them to do it. So that's quite an arrogant attitude, but sometimes it's necessary to value your own worth and your capability. Not necessarily overreaching, but I knew that I was capable of doing complex financial analysis, and I knew that this project was definitely going to need it, and I didn't see anyone else around me that would be able to do it as what I thought I would be able to. So that's why I put myself in that position, and then actually applied for that role.
Yeah, and how are you enjoying the role that you're doing now? Have you been there for a substantial long amount of time?
Yeah, so the work that I'm doing now is, once you get into financial modelling, that skill set it translates to most businesses. Most businesses at some stage will need financial modelling. The bigger and the more complex an organisation is, the more highly sought after that skill is. And so I actually got into, it's called Bidwork, or doing bids, because you're doing business-to-business deals where a customer has a requirement for a specific IT solution, and that IT solution needs costing and pricing. So the work that I do today is pricing. I am a pricing specialist, and I've become a pricing specialist through going from a company that required forecasting into a company that required pricing that needed a forecasting discipline. So with business, you're forecasting 3, 4, 5, sometimes 10, 25 years ahead. Big business, big deals, if you're talking billions, typically the time horizon is much longer. If you're talking 100 million, then you might be talking about anywhere from 5 to 10 years. If you're talking about 3, 4, 5 million, that will kind of be, 1 to 5 years. I typically get involved in deals starting at around 5 million and going up from there. But typically they'll be between 5 and 50. And they'll be 2 to 5 year contracts, that sort of thing.
When you've sort of looked at a bunch of different companies and their balance sheet and stuff like that, how often, so something I've been getting into recently is I've just been learning about like offshore companies and trust funds and figuring out all those things. Is every single company having offshore companies, having different weird setups? Is that a thing that every big company does to sort of get better effective tax rates?
No. Or so I think that what you'll and that's a really interesting question because if you don't know how widespread offshore companies are. To give you an example, it's a statistic I read the other day that there's more companies registered in the Cayman Islands, for example, than there are residents. But tax havens exist all over the world. And sometimes they're not where you think they would be. So I think that Delaware in the US is a tax haven, but it's onshore in the US. Whereas you've got some your Caribbean ones are quite well known, and they tend to attract wealth and they tend to attract money. Basically from an economic necessity. So if you're one of these Caribbean islands, you've got two sources of main income: tourism and finance. And tourism is, if you're in the Caribbean, there is some seasonality to it because you have different wet seasons or whatever. But no, there's a lot more money in it to do offshore banking, and this was developed since the 50s, and it kind of took off in a big way in the 60s and 70s as you had your early adopters, and then you have your S curve, and the S curve you have in a lot of markets where you get your early adopters and it grows very, very slowly, and then it ramps up as it becomes mainstream, and then you taper off as you reach market saturation. So you get that in virtually all industries as you go through any growth. So same thing with any technology. You get early adopters, mainstream, and then taper off as late adopters. But not every company does offshore banking. Not offshore banking. They don't all have offshore companies. A lot of them do, but it's certainly not the majority. Thankfully, the majority of most big companies still actually pay tax in their home country. That's not to say that there aren't hundreds and hundreds of thousands of offshore companies of billions and trillions of dollars of companies that have offshore entities. It's a device that you can utilize. But it really depends on how your business is conducted. For example, if you're a physical infrastructure company, it's very difficult to justify taking your revenue offshore because your justification disappears because what you sell is local. Anything where you're digital or where you have multinationals are much easier because there's a business reason for having offshore banking, because you're doing a lot of international transfers of money, and therefore having a company in the middle that takes management fees from all of its subsidiaries around the world, that becomes much easier to justify. And I kind of, I'm quite naive about all of these things. I'm aware of them, but I wouldn't say that I'm an authority on it. But I think that the majority of companies, certainly until they get into the hundreds of millions, the majority of most companies, they're too busy trying to actually do the job of running the business to think about taking it offshore. Having said that, lots of companies do. So yeah, it's not as if every company is doing it, but certainly a lot of them are.
Interesting. So right now I'm sort of looking for a new accountant. So the first ever accountant I had was pretty simple. It was like they sort of just took all my income revenue minus the expenses, and then paid 27.5% tax on that.
Yeah.
Then the second accountant I went with, I started learning things about like holding companies, trust funds, the sort of, how it's like risk management. Now if someone sues you, you're not going to lose everything if you have things in your hold. So I'm learning about all these different things, and I'm sort of gotten the hang of that over the last year. So now I'm sort of needing to look for a new accountant because we sort of just part ways. What would your recommendation be, Howard? Should I look for someone that sort of does what I currently understand, but maybe we just sort of have a better connection? Or should I be looking for an accountant that is telling me things that I don't understand? I usually get attracted to people who tell me things that I can't wrap my head around yet, because I know then there's a lot for me to learn. But within the accounting world, it might be different. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so you get good accountants and bad accountants, or not necessarily bad, but you get, in any walk of life, you get professionals who are better than others, and having a good accountant and a good solicitor or a good lawyer, they are part of your team, okay? And if you don't understand what your accountant is saying to you, that can be one of two things. Either they're talking about things and not explaining it very well, which is that's not a good outcome. But if they're trying to explain something to you that you don't understand initially, then their knowledge should always be better than what yours is, because you're going into their world and they're trying to help you minimize your taxation and to get you the best deal. So there's a big difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion has a jail cell, and is totally illegal. Yeah, and it shouldn't be condoned in any form. Tax avoidance is where there are you stick to the rules, and by being efficient with your tax affairs, you can minimize your tax spend. Now, that isn't always the reason for changing your tax setup. Often it's for protection as much as it is for minimizing tax. Minimizing tax is something that I think most business people would be interested in doing. But if you're living in a country that where you get all the benefits of that expenditure, then to me that would be a secondary thing. The primary thing is you want your money to be safe, and security is more important to me, at least, than minimization. And security comes in several different forms. So a trust, for example, it doesn't necessarily minimize your tax, but it makes your assets safer to predatory behavior. And that predatory behavior can be from another business, or somebody who tries to sue you, or from a relationship that's gone wrong. Or perhaps you want to make sure that it's safe for the next generation, for example. So understanding the purpose is really important. So what you want to achieve determines what you do. So I would say that if you don't understand your accountant, that's not necessarily means they're good, bad, or indifferent. But having a proactive accountant is definitely a good thing. Somebody who can act as an advisor that can give you suggestions to say, in your particular situation, perhaps it's worth considering X, Y, or Z, and then explaining the benefits of X, Y, and Z compared to each other. And what you don't want is somebody telling you, you must do that. You've only got one choice and your choice is X. That would not necessarily be a good accountant. A good accountant will explain why X is better than Y.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with it in terms of it's essentially having people in your corner that you know you can trust, essentially, and making sure that they explain it to you properly and be able to, you know, walk through things properly in terms of you can have, you're right, two sets of people. One will just tell you what to do, and another one will trust and you know, develop that relationship with you over time, I guess. But, you know, you've been working for a long time. Do you see yourself, Howard, as maybe opening up a business, starting a business? I think you're on the way of, you know, doing e-commerce as well. You're starting that out. How's it, like, it's essentially starting from root. What's the square one? Square one, yeah, starting from square one all over again in terms of, you know, being able to, how's that been? How's the challenges been, the adventures been? You mentioned earlier that it was like, it's good, you know, you're learning the content, but in terms of, you know, your personal journey and how it's deferred to, like, you know, the commercial path that you went down on it after uni, it's like, learning the
so I think that, yeah, I think most people would be interested in having a way to make money that is in addition to their job or instead of their job. My prime motivation is actually not for myself. So at the moment, I have a pretty good job. That's not to say that it couldn't be better. I think most people with jobs would admit that, you know,
dream bigger. Yeah, everyone's got bigger dreams.
Nobody's going to say, you know what, I really don't need an extra X amount of money. More money is always nice. Having said that, I'm you know, comfortable. However, my wife has a business which means that she has to stand on her feet for 10 hours a day, and my motivation is to try and help her have an easier life. Now, ultimately, it would be nice that if there was sufficient money that she could retire. But the initial aim is to try and make sure that she can semi-retire. So that's my motivation. It's pure and simple. You know, we have a standard of life at the moment. It's pretty good, but it's inequitable. So my life is much easier than hers. I have a desk-bound job, and I have the day-to-day stress of that job. She has a business to run, and she does a lot of things beyond which you know, normal day-to-day 9 to 5 would require. COVID has had a massive impact on the business, and it's struggling for survival. But ultimately, even if we didn't have COVID, it's a very manual intensive job that she's got, and she can't continue to do that over and over again for the next decade without it having some serious health impact. So my motivation is to find something in the medium to long term that can help her semi-retire and retire. Anything beyond that is a bonus. But my motivation is perhaps different from somebody who is in their 20s or 30s, who might not have a lot of commitment at that stage. And if you're in that position, then you're in a very fortunate position without commitments, because commitments will always change your priorities. If you've got kids, if you've got, a mortgage, if you've got bills that, irrespective of whether you want to or not, those have to be paid. You have to look after your family. Your family comes before everything. Those things are immutable. Those things are, you have to still service your debt. You still have to pay your bills on time, and taking risk, because starting a new business is taking risk, whether it is a risk of your time or risk of your money, or, if you have to put time and effort, blood, sweat and tears in, which a lot of businesses require, it's taking away from something else that you could be doing. So that has to be weighed up very carefully. And what a lot of people find is that they will try something and it doesn't work out, not because it doesn't work, but because they couldn't make it work for them, because they couldn't put the time, the commitment, the energy, and life just gets in the way. Life has a habit of getting in the way. So that's one of the reasons why, your mindset is so important. I at the end of a working day, I go and help my wife for about an hour where I can. And I'm kind of thinking that it helps up to a point. But is that hour the best use of the time? Because the opportunity cost is spending that hour doing something that can help her retire. So now I have this dilemma of, do I help her physically, or do I plan to help her to actually take away the future effort that she needs to put in? So that's a quandary. I haven't figured that one out yet. I think I just need more hours in the day and put more effort.
More hours in the day, more days in the year, more time in the day. It's always one of those things. And it's interesting to listen to a different perspective in terms of how you mentioned it, someone with a lot of commitments, because I'm very young. Unfortunately, I don't have as many commitments. So it's spot on in terms of the direction and path everyone takes is completely different based on their own personal journeys. And it's amazing, listening to your perspective and your side of it as to, how someone, who has a good job and is enjoying what they do on a day-to-day still, tries to segment the hours in the day to, try and do other things in terms of, around the clock. And that's a testament to you and the hard work that you can put in, because for me, I don't know if I could do that at this young age, in terms of coming home after a hard days of work and then going again in terms of a little bit of work. But it's crazy, isn't it? But I guess I'm sure it's going to work out eventually, and then you'll be able to join everyone in the Caribbean islands in the Bahamas and retire well.
Yeah. So I think that if you're just starting out, the more effort you can put in at the beginning, and have the discipline to actually make it work, because often, a lot of time, having a go won't work. Having a go, I think I'll just, you can't jump off a diving board slowly. The first step is also the last step. It's like, sometimes you've just got to go in and actually do it, because if you don't, then the likelihood is that you'll hit a few stumbling blocks, you'll hit a few negative things, and because you haven't gone in 100% motivated and been prepared for those knocks as and when they happen, those knocks will knock the wind out of you, and you'll be back not where you started, but worse than where you started, because you'll have wasted the time, the effort, the money, and you'll have nothing to show for it, except perhaps a negative bank account. So it doesn't matter what you do. If you're going to do it, do it.
Do it well, do it properly, and do it well.
Do it to. Now, I'm not a particularly smart person. Now, that's an ironic thing to say because of the position that I'm in at the moment. But once I try something, and I don't tend to give in. So I'll tell you a little secret. It took me 16 years to get qualified as an accountant. Yeah. Most people can do it in 4. Mm-hmm. Good people can do it in 2.
Yeah.
I failed most subjects at least once. So, you typically, you would do 4 subjects at a time, mm-hmm. and those 4 subjects would be taken every 6 months. And the way that it used to work is that you had to get at least 50% in each subject to pass.
Yeah.
Which meant you could get away with getting 50% of it wrong and still pass, So that's a low pass mark, 50%. So, I wasn't a good accountant. Or at least I wasn't. I was good at the day job. I really struggled with coming home at the end of a day job and actually putting the time in. But I stuck it out. I'm not the fastest. I'm not the smartest. But I'm persistent. I got to the stage where, and they even to the point where my qualifications became null because the subjects changed, and I then had to retake because they kind of merged, and they did that twice in the 16 years. But then also towards the end, they made it easier to pass by saying you don't have to pass all 4 at the same time. Because normally they would say you need to pass all 4 at the same time before you can progress. And I went through and I'd passed 3 and fail 1. So then you've got to do it again. All 4, pass 3, fail 1. But it would be a different one. So, but anyway, they made it easy. And then I rattled through towards the end. When I say rattled, it's still a slow rattle. But so there's nothing that beats persistence and consistency. If you've got consistency, that is, that's kind of the magic. The magic is consistency. The other one, if you can add persistence to that, nobody can beat you. If you've got consistency and persistence, it beats talent, it beats brains, it beats money, but it takes a lot longer.
Takes a lot longer. It's 100% true, and I think it's not everyone is able to or willing to or can just continue, just determined, persistent, hard work.
Yeah, I mean, if you're smart, and I look at the likes of Andy that has been very successful in a short period of time. My success has taken decades. And it's taken decades because of, I've been too dumb to give up. I just kept going until I succeed. But, for people who are able to quickly learn and go on to the next step, these are the people that you should be learning from. You shouldn't be learning things from people like me, because I'll teach you. And if you follow my path, I'll see you in 10 years, You should find, if you find the best teachers out there, they will save you time, they will save you money, they won't guarantee your success. And if you're looking for somebody to guarantee your success, you've got to look in the mirror.
Yeah,
that's and even then, there's no guarantee. But that's as good as it's going to get.
That's the best shot you have. That's the best shot that anyone has, 100%.
I wanted to get your thoughts on my hypothesis, on my search for my next accountant. So I have a hypothesis where I'm trying to decide like a small firm versus a big firm. So my hypothesis with the 2 small firms I work with is I've been able to talk to the director, and then they grown and they sort of hand me down to like an account manager, but I'm still in contact with the head of the company. And then now I'm sort of more in close contact with an account manager, and it's good because I'm in contact with the person who's helping me. Now the other approach is going to like a firm where I get assigned to like a partner. A firm is probably more efficient, it might be more expensive, you probably have no idea who's in the company, who's in the team, who's looking at anything. Everyone's just like assigned to you and you have no idea. Like in the small firms, you would sort of know everyone, you would know the reception, etc. Mm-hmm. So with that, my gut feeling or my thought is, okay, maybe it's if I want to grow, maybe going with a firm is more better because that partner might have more experience, more time, because the director of the small firm, he's dealing with a bunch of clients and he just doesn't have time. He's worrying about scaling his own business. Whereas the partner, he's working a consistent job and he doesn't have all these stresses, so he can really focus on my sort of issues and needs. So that's my hypothesis. And then with that hypothesis, I plan to then maybe talk to a bunch of sort of corporate firms, share them my issues, ask questions, and find the partner of some certain big firm that I like the best, and then just sign with them. What's your thoughts on that hypothesis, Howard?
So what you're trying to do is to qualify based on your own experience, and you don't have the experience to qualify. So you need to find somebody who has done that for you. So instead of trying to interview accounting firms and compare them, go to somebody who has already done that work for you. Go to somebody who, if you have contacts, and this is only if you have contacts, but find out somebody who is financially successful, an individual, not a company, not a corporation, and find out who their accountant is. And that's the best piece of advice that I would give you. Simply because if they're financially successful, they've already been through several accountants to get there, and they will know who they work with and why they work with them. Now, the downside to that is they may be expensive. But you may be able to find somebody, you actually want somebody who doesn't do your accounts. You're not looking for somebody to just do your accounts at the end of the year. As you progress and become more successful, you're looking for taxation planning, not just completion. Completion is what happens at the end after what you did during the year has already happened. You need to get at the beginning of the year and set things up so that at the end of the year you get the benefit of that setup. Now, perhaps talking to successful people and finding out who their accountants are, if you can do that. If you can't do that, then I would do some searching. I would try to find out public figures that you know, or people that you suspect are pretty well off, and see if you can search to find out who their accountant is. Sometimes that information will be publicly available.
Really? Ah.
Yes.
So let's say there's like a public figure. Oh, for example, I don't know, the Prime Minister of Australia. Am I able to? Do I just search up Prime Minister of Australia accountant? I don't know who the Prime Minister is. But...
No. So the first thing is that when you get big enough, every limited company has to submit their accounts to ASIC in Australia. So that's a public record. Those accounts will have been prepared by an accountant.
Yeah. And most of the companies you can see
every company set of accounts will say on the first page, prepared. Ernst & Young or
Deloitte, PwC.
Deloitte, PwC, these accounts represent a true and fair view of the accounts of this company.
At this date, yeah.
Those accounts are prepared by those companies. So by virtue of the fact that it's a public document, you can request ASIC, I want to see the chart of accounts for this company. You can pay your money and you'll get the accounts. Sometimes I think they're free, Sometimes if you go onto the website of the company, you can get a copy of the accounts. For an individual, the individual will probably do business through a limited company. That may be a little bit of a search, but that homework is probably where I'd start. If I was particularly interested, and I don't do this, by the way, but my financial position on my tax affairs are very flat, because most of my financial affairs are through my employment, and the tax is deducted before I see it. So I don't have trust accounts and all sophisticated accounting. But if I was in that position, then I would want somebody who knew what we were talking about. So I would actually look for taxation specialists and perhaps read some of their websites. And then interview. But for me, if it was me personally, I want to be talking to the guy. I want to be talking to the person. And when I say guy, I mean male or female. If you want to be talking to somebody, you want to buy their time and their expertise. The expertise isn't in 28 people's heads. It's in a few people's heads. Now, if you have a very big company, they will have process. They will have set up processes figuring out what the most beneficial tax rules and tax things are for your situation. So it's not whether it's big or small. It's whether they're competent or not. Competence, you can get a one-man band who is more competent and more useful than a corporation, and also the reverse is true. A massive, like your H&R Block or one of your other accounting firms, they sometimes are appropriate for your situation. It depends on the match of what you need versus what they offer. But I would start off with, what is it you want to achieve? You want security, you want tax minimization, you want a tax advisor, not somebody at the end of the year to do your taxes. So I would definitely shop about, so I would do it in both directions, triangulate. And that's what I do in my day job if I want to find something out. If I want to find something out in my day job, I don't look in one place, because if you look in one place, you'll get one thing. You look in 5 or 6 places, and then you look at where they overlap. And where they overlap, if they overlap, is where you need to focus.
Makes sense. So I guess based on what you told me, I would sort of look up big companies within my space. I don't know if you heard Founder Magazine, Greta, like companies like that, where they're within the informational, educational space. Go to their website, find their company. Now they're most likely going to be private companies, but I'll go to ASIC, see if there's any reports on their ASIC. It says, let's say H&R Block. Go to H&R Block, say, hey, this is my situation. I saw that you work with Founder Magazine. I'm in a similar industry. Could you please point me to the right person to talk to within your company?
Yes.
And then I repeat that process with maybe 1 or 2 other people within my industry that are much bigger.
Yes. Yeah. And what you'll end up doing is eventually you'll be speaking to somebody who will take the time to educate you as to what the appropriate thing is for your situation. And they will lay it out and you'll understand it. if you don't understand it, that's not your fault. That's their job to help you understand it. If they're not helping you understand it, how can you choose? If you don't understand something, so their knowledge should always be better than yours.
Correct.
But they should.
I want to rephrase it. I meant not like I'm hearing things that are completely new to me, that are out of my sort of area of expertise. That's sort of what I meant by it.
You should be hearing that.
Yes.
But they should also be explaining what those things mean.
Correct.
And if they're not explaining, then you don't know why you're doing something. You know, it's you don't just need to know the what. You need to know the why and the how.
Otherwise, you're just following blindly.
What ifs? Yeah, I mean, it may be the most appropriate thing for you, but the accountant's not doing their job if you don't know the why. Because what they need to do is to paint the picture of, well, if you did this, it would avoid that. Or if you did this, what's the cost benefit? Sometimes setting up a complex system is appropriate, but sometimes the cost of it is more than the benefit.
Yeah.
So you have to weigh things up. And in my world, in financial world, cost benefit analysis. You always do your cost benefit analysis. It's never how much does it cost. It's not. Yeah. It's what's it worth and how much does it cost me to get that value.
Amazing. Do you have any other questions?
No, I'm just soaking in a lot that Howard's been able to go through, and I think we'll wrap it up here, Howard. I appreciate your time very much. It's been such an amazing chat. I've learned so much just sitting down, just listening as well. And yeah, I just want to say, appreciate your time very much. Thank you so much for coming on. And I hope you're able to grow and into the side business more and, develop that. And I'm excited to see where it leads you. Thank you so much for joining. I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, Andy, thanks very much. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Howard. I really appreciate your time. I think I just love your authenticity and sort of lack of ego when you are able to say things like that. Like I'm a big fan of sharing that, maybe I got really lucky. I got born in the right time. I'm just really lucky, I guess. And then I do have shortcomings. I do struggle in things. And I think one of my strengths is asking people's questions because I don't know. The reason why I love doing these podcasts is because I ask a lot of questions, and that can only come from a place of me not knowing. So I don't know a lot of things, and that's why I ask a lot of questions, and that's something I really resonate with you, and I really appreciate you coming on, and hopefully you had a fun time chatting. That's sort of why I do these podcasts. It's something I look forward to. But yeah, thank you so much, Howard.
No, you're welcome. I think on the authenticity part, I think that if you're looking to increase your standard of living, you've got to find honest people, because it's so easy to find the opposite. It's so easy to find the opposite. And any time you're handing over money, you're also handing them your trust. And so you've really got to find honest people with integrity, and that's harder to find than it should be. It's harder to find than it should be. But thank you. I mean, I'm looking forward to finding out next steps as well.
Awesome. Christian, please close it off.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you guys so much for listening. Episode 57. Subscribe. We've been going well in our YouTube recently. Just bump up some of these subscriber numbers. If you're liking it, leave a like, leave a comment. TikToks, all the links will be below. TikTok, YouTube, Spotify, etc. Appreciate all the support. Thank you guys as always, and peace.